Hearing loss affects a lot of people, from the ones suffering the loss to family and friends who can feel misunderstood or ignored. I talked to audiologist Dr. Gnewikow about some of the most common types of hearing loss. Take a look.
I think the most common occurrence is when people lose their ability to hear high frequencies. Now, without getting too technical, for those of you audiophiles out there that work with a stereo, you know there's something called an equalizer. It's got these little things you slide up and down so you can make more treble or you can make more bass. Well, if you take that and turn your amplifier down and then take all of your treble and push it all the way down so you're not hearing treble anymore, the first thing you're going to say is, that sounds muffled to me. Or if you're in your car radio, riding in your car and you turn your car radio on and you're listening to a news broadcaster, particularly a woman, and you turn your bass all the way up so it's loud and your treble all the way down, immediately things sound muffled. So if you do the opposite, if you turn your bass all the way down and turn your treble up, then immediately things seem to be a lot clearer. So what happens is most hearing loss is more pronounced in high frequencies. It can come from loud noise, it can come from disease processes, but most people have high frequency hearing loss, which means there are certain speech sounds that are made in that frequency range that you no longer are able to hear. Or if you do hear them, you hear them at a very soft level. So if you take two words, for example, like sow, a sower went out to sow, and a word like foe, the Army met the foe on the battlefield. The only difference between those two words is the initial consonant. That is one of many high-frequency consonants. So if you don't hear the high-frequency consonants, you might hear your preacher say, an Oer went out to O, or the Marines met the O on the battlefield. Because what happens in high-frequency hearing loss is you no longer can hear those sounds. And sometimes one sound in one word, if it's in an inaudible range, can change the entire meaning of what you're talking about. So in most instances, that's what causes it. There are things that can make it worse. Background noise is one of the classical examples. People say, well, I can hear you as long as the room is quiet, but when I get into noise, I just can't understand you. And it's because background noises tend to mask these high frequencies even more. So if you're the kind of person that says, I can hear you fine sitting in a quiet room looking at you, but when we're in a restaurant, I don't know what you're saying, then in most likelihood, you have a high frequency loss and you're not hearing the consonants. Another issue that causes some loss of speech comprehension is the speed with which people talk. Sometimes if you're not getting all those sounds and you know what they're talking about, you have a little recovery time. You can fill in based on the context. Mm-hmm. But if people talk rapidly and you have a high frequency loss, you're still stuck on the third word and they're up to their 20th word. Right. Another issue is the pitch of the voice. A lot of people will tell you, I really hear men better than women. Mm-hmm. And when I get my grandchildren, I don't know what they're saying. Well, part of it could be that children tend to speak very rapidly, and that's one issue. But I think the big issue is the pitch. Women and children have shorter vocal cords. And if you play a guitar, you know when you fret that string down, the pitch goes up. So when you have a shorter vocal cord, then the pitch of the voice goes up. If you don't hear high pitch well, if you don't hear high frequency well, then you don't understand. Now, a man has a deeper bass or baritone voice, so he's going to be more easily understood than a person who has a high pitch to their voice. The last issue I think that contributes to this is the inability to see people. If the husband's in the living room and the wife is in the kitchen and she's talking and he has a high frequency hearing loss, he can hear her voice fine because he hears the low pitches, he hears the vowels, but he doesn't hear the consonants. And he also is not able to see her. And although people never admit to lip reading, everyone lip reads. 99% of every conversation in your life, you've been looking at the person you were talking to, which means your brain has been storing both visual and audio files. When you start losing your high frequencies, you start compensating with that. So those are some of the things that can make it worse. So the moral to the story is, if your husband doesn't hear you well or your wife doesn't hear you well, talk face to face. Mm-hmm. Look at them. Slow your speed down just a little bit and try to turn off any noises that are not needed. The big answer to understanding, however, is bringing the high frequencies back. And that is done using hearing aids. I wear hearing aids. You can't really even see them. It's a very tiny little tube, and I use a little device behind my ear. If you can bring that, if you can focus in to see it. And what that does is it leaves my ear open so that my low frequencies can come in naturally. So what comes through the little tube are the high frequencies, and that allows me to understand speech much better. So I guess I kind of have an advantage. I'm both a doctor and a patient. So I can speak from the standpoint of technically what happens, but I can also empathize with a patient that has a hearing loss because I have one myself.
You're a doctor, a patient, and a therapist too, because you get these people in here and my husband's not listening to me. You must kind of help save relationships.
Well, I think we have. And in a lot of cases, the spouse is, it's not that they're not listening. And that's what you get from the husband or wife. They just don't listen to me. They're not paying attention. They're tuning me out. Well, you can do that. But in many instances, they're not tuning them out. They really are trying. And so you've got to give them the benefit of the doubt. If you've got a high frequency hearing loss, that within itself will account for a lot of these issues.
And so basically, too, the interesting thing is you suggest that a lot of folks bring in their spouse and you talk about it together because you're getting both points of view, right?
Exactly right. Yeah, it's always better if a patient comes in with a hearing loss to bring a spouse. If their spouse is no more, then bring a son or daughter so that we can explain things to the family as well. Sometimes communication is just as much of a problem for the family as it is for the patient. A few little hints to a family member can significantly improve communication. So it's not always the listener. Sometimes it's the speaker as well. And in most cases, it's a little bit of both. But most individuals don't have difficulty understanding because they're not listening. It's because they've got some degree of high frequency loss. And the good news is we've got really good technology now, and we can really address that well. People used to be told if you had nerve damage, a hearing aid wouldn't help. That's just not true. The technology now really has come a long way, and we have changed a lot of lives, and we probably saved a lot of marriages.
And always good advice from Dr. Gnewikow. There is 2 area locations for Audiology Hearing Aid Associates, one in Lynchburg, 434-528-4245, also online at digitalhearingforyou.com. And then they also have a Danville location on Main Street, 434-799-6288. And also more information is online at digitalhearingforyou.com.